Hey there, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. We have Blair Singer with us today, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. Now, Blair is a best-selling author, SaleDogs, one of his books, Little Voice Mastery, Team Code of Honor, some of his books. He's also been a Rich Dad advisor, and he's a leadership coach. He's got Blair Singer Virtual Training Academy, which is his platform for reaching out and helping others become better leaders, better business people. So welcome, Blair.
Thank you, Rajiv. It's good to be here.
Absolute pleasure having you. So let's begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'll give you the snapshot version. As you mentioned, I've been a Rich Dad advisor for many years. Robert Kiyosaki and I've been friends since we met back in the early 1980s in Hawaii. I grew up in the Midwest, got sick and tired of the weather there, and I got out of university and decided to move to Hawaii. And that's really when my entrepreneurial adventure began. I started as a sales rep for a large Fortune 50 company. Almost got fired from that first position, but I realized that the challenge that I faced was the fact that I had never sold anything. I thought it wouldn't be such a big deal, but the amount of rejection and objections I got out of the gate, I was ready to quit, until I realized a couple of days into it that really it had very little to do with the customer. It had really to do with the toughest sale of all, which is me selling me to me, right? Convincing myself, if you've ever been in a situation like that. And so that began a quest to not only win the battle of my brain, or what I call the little voice in your head, little voice mastery, but just became adamant about seeking the better part of myself, and went from being a sales rep to starting my own business at a surf shop in Waikiki, air freight trucking operation in Los Angeles, software business, now a sales franchising business, and now Blair Singer Training Academy, which is a group of about 400 trainers deployed in about 40 countries around the world right now. They're some of the best teachers, leaders, and facilitators in the world. And that's what I do. And that's why I was very intrigued by your plan B when you talk about what do you do when you really decide consciously what you want to do rather than just kind of falling into something. Is that your plan B, or is your plan B really your plan A that you didn't have the courage to take on in the very beginning, right?
Right.
So that's about myself.
Awesome. So, your some of your books, and the first one that comes to mind is SaleDogs. Can you talk a little bit about that? You started off saying that you had never sold anything, and now here you are coaching leaders and coaching salespeople.
Yeah, and that book was my first book, written around 2000, somewhere in that time frame. I realized that sales equals income, right? And in my travels around the world, up until COVID, I was on the road 2/3 of my life, working with hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs in big groups, small groups, big companies like Singapore Airlines and IBM and HSBC Private Bank and people like this. And what I realized, the one thing in common is that people wanted income, but they didn't like to sell. Everybody wants the money, but in order to generate money, particularly as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to sell. And even as an investor, you have to be able to sell if you're raising capital. So I just figured, what can I do to make it really easy for people to learn that you don't have to be an attack dog, you don't have to be crazy, you don't have to be a pit bull to be able to make money. And that's why I wrote the book, which is basically, there are 5 personality types, right? And once you find out what your personality type is, play to your strength, you can make a lot of money. You don't have to be like somebody else. And it was the first Rich Dad Advisor book, by the way. And it's been translated, I think, over 30 languages, and it's still selling. It's still selling all over the world. I'm very blessed by that. But it hit a chord, 2 chords. Back in 2000, 2000, the idea of being authentic was kind of a new development in personal development. It's like you got to be yourself, do all that kind of stuff. And so I really maintain that rather than trying to be somebody that you're not, if you can be who you are, people are going to appreciate that and trust you more. And that turned out to be true. And that's been my career. So I thought I'd teach it to other people, and it's been very popular ever since.
You also talk about the little voice. What's that?
The little voice is that thing in your head that just said, "What little voice? I don't have a little voice." That's the one. Okay. I tease, it sounds like my mother or something like that, but it's what the little voice is, that part of your brain that says things like, well, you're not smart enough, you can't do it yet, you're not old enough, you're too old, you're too skinny, you're too fat, you're too slow, all these things, all the stuff that comes in your brain that virtually seeps or saps the confidence right out of you. And I've seen countless amazing dreams, goals, and plans that just never saw the light of day because the person involved, the creator of that, didn't have the courage to because the little voice kept telling they weren't good enough or not yet, or whatever the procrastinating voice is that sabotages your best efforts. And so I wrote the book, Little Voice Mastery, because I have the same problem. And so my solution was to seek out the best teachers, gurus, and personal development coaches I could find over the years, and basically compiled it into a very simple book. And I isolated about 21 different techniques that a person can actually use. If the little voice says this, you do that. If the little voice does this, you do that, or you don't do that. And to be able to turn it around quickly, at least long enough for you to gain your senses, because the little voice, Rajiv, is not the real you. The real you is expansive, it's creative, it's courageous, but all that little voice stuff is a composite of your parents, and teachers, and media, and politicians, and all the narratives that flood our lives, and you end up believing it unless you understand that it's not the same as the real you.
When we talk about the real person, the real who you are, obviously any person is at their best or most comfortable when they are themselves. But the world that we live in, the corporations that we work in, the roles that we play, there's a certain expectation of them in terms of the person that steps into that role and does things in order to get those results that are sought. And somewhere in that process is where people lose themselves.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I'm just going to make a comment about that if it's okay. And that is that you and I know that being your true authentic self is where your strength is, right? But I'm just going to say that the environment that you're working in, whether it's in school, whether it's in a corporation, whether it's in a big or small business, most people will give lip service to the fact that that's true. But the truth of it is that may not be what they want. The real you may not be enough for what they want. That's a fact. In other words, if the real you is, if I tell you, I need to sell, you want me to sell, it makes me very nervous. I'm a little scared. I'm willing to learn, but you may have an employer who doesn't want to hear that, even though you're being yourself. I mean, that's a fact. And so then you got to either decide, I don't want to be here, or you're going to have to make the changes you need to make so that you can be your real self. So it's not an exact science. I've had many people over the years say to me, well, I want to find my true purpose, and I want to do, and I'm a big believer in finding your purpose and being your authentic self. But at the same time, one thing I know about me is that I have still not achieved the best me yet. I don't know that any of us do, right? And so I am on a constant quest and journey to find out what that is. And so it's a constantly working process. So I think that some people use the idea of that I got to be myself, sometimes as an excuse not to do things, when in fact, yeah, you got to be yourself, but yourself can also improve, and yourself can also get better, and yourself can obtain new skills. I would hope that I today am a better person, a more skilled person, a more conscious person than maybe I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. For sure, 30 years, or better than 30 years ago, if I look at what I was spending my time doing. So yeah, authenticity is really important. And again, as you mentioned, that's the key to that book, SaleDogs. And that's why little voice mastery is such a big part of that, because it's the little voice that stops you from doing all the things that I just mentioned.
But to continue on what I was saying, so we are quick to judge, although a lot of people talk about that you should not be judging. We are not objective. You're very subjective. Everybody's quick to judge. So let's say you're hiring for a role. Well, the way you see that role and what that role should be doing is through your tinted glasses. It's not about right or wrong. It's about you seeing it through your tinted glasses. And then there might be, let's say you get 10 resumes, and they might all be qualified, and they might all need to be given that one chance to go through the process before you make a decision. But a lot of them are cut out before, right? Why? Because the person who has that control over that judgment has certain preconceived notions. So
That's right.
and that's the same case with sales, right? So what's your advice to people who are on the other side?
Okay, so, well, my advice to the person that's applying is let's start with the other one. The person that's doing the interviewing, I'm gonna say that learn to be a better leader. Learn to be a better coach, learn to be a better leader, learn that there's a certain psychology to human beings. And by the way, it continues to change. The world we live in now is not the same that it was pre-pandemic, as you know. Sales has changed. The approach to sales has changed. The approach to we're in the middle of what they call the Great Resignation right now. People are leaving. There's over 10 million new jobs available in America. People aren't taking them. And, and one of the big reasons is because those guys are doing the interviewing. They're not creating an environment that people want to stay in. If I can do the same amount of work at home and be with my kids, why would I want to go in there and be abused? Okay, so that's one side. On the other side, if you're the applicant, is to understand a couple things. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship. I'll just be honest with you. Okay. And I know there's a lot of professionals and students out there. I'm just going to say that I was in the corporate environment for several years. I was a top salesperson there. I don't think I could go back to it. And the reason I can't go back to it is because once you get a taste of the freedom of being yourself and being able to actually generate income and be able to build teams and be able to see what's available to you, I couldn't go back to that. The ultimate freedom and probably the best at this stage of our society, the best path to being financially free really is as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur. And so I would have a person heavily consider that. If you consider yourself to be a little bit different than other people, you don't quite conform so much, you like to do things your own way and things like that, you might want to think twice about applying, and then why you're applying for that job. Are you applying to that job for the money? I knew that when I first did, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the highest paying position I could get. That's why I went into sales, because it seemed like there was no ceiling. But that's the first thing I tell the applicant is consider entrepreneurship. More people now than ever before. I think that I read the Small Business Administration said in 2020, the number of new applicants, new registrations of businesses in the United States was up 27% year on year from 2019. Now, the average, Rajiv, is only 5% a year. So that's like 5 times what it was before, right in the middle of the pandemic. But the other side of that is we know that half of those people are going to fail because they don't have the skills, they don't have the tools, they don't have the little voice mastery to overcome the adversity. So then they kind of settle back for another job. I'm getting off track a little bit. Your question was, what would I say to the applicant? And I'd say to the applicant, never stop learning. always know going in that you're going to have to learn a lot, and it's going to change again, change again, change again. And if you go in with the attitude of, I'm going to take on this job because I want to learn this, because there's things here I really want to learn. I went to work for the Burroughs Corporation. Robert went to work for the Xerox Corporation not because we love those companies, because we knew they had the best sales training programs. And we knew that would serve us later. So I would say, wherever you apply, look at it as a place for you to learn what you need to learn. Now, if it turns out a great place and the environment's good, that's a plus. And you'll stay and you'll grow with it. But if not, at least it'll be a rewarding experience. And as you learn, you'll help the company you're working with, and it works for everybody.
Right. So, when it comes to sales and business development, again, there's before you even begin, right? So you got to have the other person who's willing to buy, or who's willing to at least look into buying, needs to trust. It's a trust factor.
Yeah.
And there's this notion that sales and business development most of the time is about smoke and mirrors. What's your take on that?
Well, I think unfortunately you're right. That a lot of people think that, but I think that, like I said, I've just watched what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years, and anybody that's using smoke and mirrors is out. Okay, it's just not. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work anymore. People hold on to their money a little bit tighter. They're a little more scrutinous, and smoke and mirrors don't work. Now, so if a person is selling from that perspective, I tell you to stop and to make some changes, because the amount of money because that smoke and mirrors approach works at the bottom of the pyramid. And the bottom of the pyramid is commodity selling, right? That's when people are just selling for price, and bundling and high pressure and all that. When you start moving up the hierarchy at the very top, people buy because they see you as the seller. They see you as a source of information, a source of wisdom, a source of insurance, almost, so to speak. That you become an insurance policy. That doing business with you is less of a risk than dealing with the other guy. Okay, so that's how that's changed. I think you have to really change your approach. And if you're a person that buys, a buyer, we're all buyers, is to get the notion out of your mind that it's smoke and mirrors, because you may miss out on some good opportunities. It's not all smoke and mirrors. Just learn to ask good questions. We teach salespeople that the power of the person that asks the question is usually in control of the conversation. But that's true for the customer as well. You should be asking lots of questions, important questions, intelligent questions, and get the answers that you want. If you don't get the answers you want, go someplace else. And forget the smoke and mirror stuff. Don't be afraid of the sales. I see people, they go to a store, and a salesperson comes up to them, and they're afraid. No, I'm not interested. They don't want to talk to them. Don't be afraid of these guys. I mean, ask good questions. You'll find that there are some people out there that really do want to help you. They do really want to serve you, and they can do a great job. And so I think it's a time, Rajiv, of changing our stereotypes, changing what we think we are, what we think they are, and who's us and who's them, and what's selling and what's buying. I think it's really healthy. I mean, I hate to say this, but I think COVID, in many cases, it's been tragic because of the hundreds of thousands of people that have suffered and died. But I think that it's pushed us on to a place where we are coming to grips with things in business, for sure, that we weren't coming to grips with, and now we are. And that's a good thing. I think that's a very good thing. And I think that life rewards the courageous. I think life rewards the educated. I think, and education is not just school. It's like you and I, probably the school of hard knocks. You learn from your mistakes, and that's the best teacher of all.
Absolutely. So Blair, how long have you been coaching?
Officially, I don't know. I've been in this business. I've been doing this business since the early 90s, and training, coaching, teaching. I used to do coaching a long time ago, then stopped doing it, do more training and bigger groups and bigger groups and bigger groups and organizations, stuff like that. And just recently I've gotten back to the coaching. Why? Because, well, first of all, it's easy to do now because I don't travel as much. But the other part of it is because I really wanted to get closer to our customers, to find out what's going on for them, find out where their heads are at. And it's been unbelievably valuable to be able to, I mean, I'm in the training business, so it makes sense, but to be able to actually go from training to coaching, to dealing with smaller groups and individuals and interacting with them on an ongoing basis has been extremely valuable. But I've been doing it. We started, Kiyosaki and I both started this journey together about 1984. I'm going to say 1983, 84. We started training to train because we were enamored by it. We studied a fellow by the name of Dr. Buckminster Fuller. I'm not sure if you ever heard of him. Bucky Fuller, a great architect, engineer, prolific author, changed our lives. And started doing it part-time, and in 1991, 92, I think I sold my trucking operation in LA to teach full-time. And it's been a wild ride ever since. I've met some of the greatest people in the world, been in some of the most beautiful places in the world, and had some of the greatest wins in the world. So it's been a great, great adventure.
So your clientele, is it mostly corporations or is it also individuals, executives?
These days, it's mostly individuals, entrepreneurs, individuals that are a lot of employees that want to become entrepreneurs, and larger groups. I used to do almost all corporate type training. I mean, like I said, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was HSBC in Hong Kong. It was Diners World Travel and Singapore. It was Singapore Airlines around the world. It was all that kind of stuff. And it was very rewarding, but it was very taxing. And the frustration that I had, as we kind of talked about this earlier, is that I would go in and we do some amazing work, building championship teams, increasing sales, setting up, great mission statements and code of honors. And then the administration would change. Or somebody knew there would be a new CEO and they'd bring in their team and their idea and their philosophy, and then all that would be gone. And it just was very disheartening for me because I'm very passionate about what I do and I really like to watch it grow. So now, like I said, I do mostly work with, we do a few corporates, like L'Oreal, still do a lot of work with L'Oreal brands all over the world, but with mostly with entrepreneurs.
And what's your sales process? How do your clients find you?
Well, we have several different ways of generating leads. We generate leads. We have promoters. Having been in the business a long time, and having a decent reputation, I've worked with some of the most amazing promoters in various areas in India and across Asia and Europe and Latin America and Mexico, all over the world. And so these people, we have a series of programs that teach people how to be great trainers and leaders and facilitators. We also have a series of programs that teach people how to be successful entrepreneurs, and a bunch of pieces in between that. So, and they promote those programs, and I show up and I teach, and we do joint ventures. We also generate a lot of leads through referrals. All of our trainers deployed around the world go through a lot of training with me, and they become certified, and then they promote programs. I help them create their programs. I help them facilitate it. Sometimes they bring me in to do it, or mostly what I'm mostly interested in getting them to teach those programs, which they do eventually. So I'm trying to actually do less of that. And my goal is probably over the next couple of years, I'll be doing less
All right. So, Blair, one other question I have is you have something called the Mountain Leadership Experience. What's that about?
I'm sorry, could
Yeah,
you
I was,
repeat that,
yeah, I was
please?
asking your Mountain Leadership Experience. What's that about? Can you hear me, Blair? Yeah.
Try again, please.
Your Mountain Leadership Experience. What's that about?
Oh, okay. Good. Thank you. Mountain Leadership Experience is about, we take every summer for 2 weeks, we take a group of my students or colleagues to Tanzania, Africa, and we climb Mount Kilimanjaro,
Wow.
which is the largest freestanding mountain in the world, right? And so I've been going there since 2012. When I went there with my son, I didn't go there. We just went to do an adventure together. But it was such an amazing experience that when we came off the mountain, I was talking to our guides who actually are from Scottsdale area here where I live. And we decided, I said, there were so many lessons. I journaled all the lessons that I learned there and love to teach this to other people. So ever since then, every year we take a group of about 25 to 35 people up the mountain. Well, we first go there, we work in the orphanages and the hospitals, and we do community service for several days. That was the original reason why I went to Tanzania, was to do community service with my son. And then we climbed the mountain after that. So, which turned out to be an amazingly difficult experience, but unbelievably rewarding, and learned so much. So that's what it is. So it's called Mountain Leadership Experience. And if anybody's interested, you go to mountainleadershipexperience.com, or you go to blairsinger.com, find out about it. And it's an amazing experience. It's kind of like your 7 days, out of the 13 days, 7 days are on the mountain. I think we're 5.5 days up and a day and a half down. And it's every day is a microcosm of your entire life and your entire business. So at the end of that day's journey, we get in a big dome tent and I debrief, what'd you learn today? And there's a big ahas, big insights, many tears, lots of laughter. And it's just, I keep doing it for me because every time I go, I learn so much.
Awesome. And you also have a podcast that you run?
Say again, please.
You also have a podcast that you run?
Well, we have a podcast that we're bringing back up again. And a podcast right now, we call it The Other Side of the Coin, which is the fact of the matter, there's always at least two sides to every issue. I mean, there's the good part of selling, there's the bad part of selling. There's the good part of the pandemic, there's the bad part of the pandemic. But it's a podcast that I'm doing with some of my friends, some of the Rich Dad advisors, with some of our amazing team. Some of my trainers that started with me are now way surpassed me in some certain areas, like in areas of marketing, video marketing, sales, and team development, things like that. Interview them as they work with thousands of people themselves, plus other folks that are of like mind, or of unlike mind, to find out what the other side of the coin is.
Awesome. So the best place to find more about your programs and books, would that be blairsinger.com?
That's right, blairsinger.com. Go to blairsinger.com. We have a whole, virtual training academy up there on that website that is filled with classes and master classes and pearls of wisdom from the other advisors. There's a whole classes on little voice mastery, video-based classes. There's a whole set of classes on sales mastery, team code of honor mastery, of how to be a great teacher, leader, facilitator, even if you're not doing it professionally. So there's all kinds of great stuff there. And if people want to find out, there's a lot of great free content as well. to go check it out at blairsinger.com.
Awesome. Well, Blair, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. Very inspiring. I'm sure a lot of listeners will go and check out your website, your programs, your books, and all. And we wish you the very best as you move along. But before I let you go, one takeaway for the listeners, anything that you'd like to share?
Sure. I guess what I'd like to share is that the distance, let me say it this way. Most people are very poor judges of time and space distance. Okay. We overestimate, underestimate horribly. And so what I'm going to say to everybody based on that is the distance between you and where you want to be, or who you want to become, or what you want to achieve is not nearly as far as you think it is. Okay. It's really mostly the distance between your right ear and your left ear is the distance. And when you really get your head around that, there's really no excuse not to achieve what you want. The only thing that stops people is this incessant thought that I got to do things alone. I got to do things on my own, which is what we learn in school, that you got to be the performer. But the truth of it is, at anything that you want, if you can assemble a decent team, a team that's committed, you can achieve just about anything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Blair. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's been a pleasure learning about you.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. Same here. Take care.